Welcome to the live recording of the podcast Start, Scale, Succeed. My name is Nicole Higgins, aka the Buy and Retail Coach, and I am the host of Start, Scale, Succeed, which is a podcast for product business founders aimed at helping you start and grow your business. And on the podcast, I chat with entrepreneurs and experts, like the expert to the side of me here, about different elements that are going to help your business. And today we were talking about, is PR over, or as PR as we know it or think of it, is it over? And I'm talking with Priscilla Pollara, journalist and communications expert. So Priscilla, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of what we're going to talk about, can you just do a quick intro to who you are and what you do? I always feel a bit like Cilla Black, for those that remember Cilla Black.
That is partly my name. So, well, last time we recorded a podcast, we were miles and miles away on a computer. This is much nicer. Hello, everyone, and to anyone listening at home, which is very odd, very 2025, isn't this? I'm Priscilla, and I run Top Trick, which is a comms consultancy. So I help everyone and anyone, businesses, founders, politicians, authors, anyone, with help that is generally about PR. So raising profiles, understanding how to communicate better, better storytelling. And I am a passionate advocate to get people to stop feeling ignored, whether that's in an office, they work part of a team where their great ideas are not heard, maybe because they're too nervous to say or don't know how, or businesses perhaps like yours, whoever's listening today, small businesses, small in size, I don't mean in mentality, you know what it's like to feel ignored, that you've created something brilliant, but you don't know how to take it to market. So I'm a huge advocate for getting you out of that dark room and out into the light.
And Priscilla, you've been in PR for, not in PR, but in terms of journalism, you've been in this career for a long time. How has PR changed, though, or the idea of PR evolved?
I think, so I come at PR and understanding it as a journalist. So I'm slightly biased, but maybe that's why you're listening to this. It's not a cookie-cutter answer. The way PR has changed, it's not so much the PR has changed, it's actually, I think, how we need it has changed. And how it benefits people has changed. Certainly when I started as a journalist, obviously it depends on what journalism you do and lots of different sorts of PR out there. I mean, even Donald Trump has PR, so obviously we're looking at a big range of things here. But I think in the old days, it was very much sort of an agency would take on 7 brands, perhaps in the same industry, perhaps not. They'd have a database of journalists. There were many more journalists in those days, especially, more importantly, I should say, journalists who were salaried and had a job and were in an office, whereas not really the case now. There's a lot of job shares and there's a lot of freelance work, basically. So you're sort of pitching to a freelance who's then hoping to pitch to an editor. And in those days, you know, you would hand over a brand and say, can you do me a PR campaign, here's a retainer, or I'll pay your retainer, and you send it to the database. And one thing that's really changed is the concept of storytelling. You could be selling blinds or a hotel in Bali, and only one story would suffice, which is, this is what it is, this is why we're good, goodbye. Please take it, 3 months, give me a campaign, find me press coverage, and that's it. That doesn't work so much anymore. It doesn't work, it's not successful, but also that isn't the kind of contact journalists want. They don't want to hear from third parties necessarily. I can take it from me. They want to hear from the founders. They want to hear from the people who have the passion. Third parties dilutes the story, dilutes the energy from it, and that is what's changed. I think it's, like everything has changed in our world, you know, you can buy something right now as you're listening to me on Amazon Prime. It's not as quick. And as you can see here today at Top Drawer, and anyone who's not here, it's a hive of activity. There are so many more people in business. More of us are entrepreneurial, more entrepreneurial than ever, as you will know, Nicole. And therefore the competition is much higher as well. And there are fewer spots to shout from, especially in the press. It's become a very small industry. Even 20 years ago, it was enormous compared to now. So that's what's changed. I think PR hasn't changed, but what we need to do to be seen has changed.
And the contact points, like you say, have changed, and how people who you want to target and get in touch with, how they work has changed as well. And what would you say, where should a business focus their efforts from a from a visibility and a PR point of view?
I would say, I was just talking about it a moment ago, but finding your audience, which is a phrase well overused now, is so key because to stand on the corner of a place like Oxford Street and shout is not... would have worked a few years ago, but as I said, the competition is overwhelming. So to be heard, yes, do you shout louder? Of course. But do you shout from Oxford Street, or do you shout on a street where people are going to be interested in what you have to say? You can't take so much of a punt anymore. Finding your audience is really key, also because people have got very interested in storytelling, which is fantastic because you get into the heads of people who are your customers. But if you're telling a story to the wrong people, they won't buy. So Instagram is a very good example. Obviously, it's been fantastic. It is a fantastic way to connect. It's a brilliant form of free visual PR. But let me show you how I think of it. If you see an account, doesn't matter what it is, that has, not sort of enormous numbers, but quite sort of healthy and they look very attractive. The truth is that a lot of the vanity metrics that you see there, the views, the likes, the whatevers, they can also be created by those they know, neighbours, sisters, best friends, fathers, anyone, who they're not necessarily buying. They might not be converting. And so what I'm saying is if somebody creates fantastic video and they put it up on a reel and it looks brilliant, and that's super, but is it going to the audience that you need to come forward and buy from you? So are you talking in Oxford Street again, shouting about something? Are they coming up to you, like a street performer, are they coming up to you at the end and giving you that coin, or are they just walking away quietly? That's what we need to think about. So speaking better, more loudly, but to your audience. You need a much faster journey, as it were, to the end point.
And how can people speed that up then and get a quicker return on their time from a PR point of view? How can they assess what's the right way for them?
One really good way of getting started in this, if you're feeling overwhelmed just by that answer, is to circle back to a moment when someone has got something wrong about you. It's a little exercise I do with almost anyone who's new, who I work with. We all know what it's like when somebody gets your name wrong, or when you thought they knew your name, more importantly, or something else. But towards your business, that's really tricky, because imagine you've put everything into it, including your savings and your time, and somebody gets something wrong about you, which is fine. Human error is obviously acceptable, but it's rather annoying when you've put everything into it, and that is what happens. And that is how you start to think, right, I've got to do everything to prevent that from happening. So that is storytelling better. I don't really like storytelling. I don't know why I'm saying that, but sort of creating a buzz of your own. So one of the reasons why I find third-party PR tricky is because you sell your passion to somebody who then has to sell it for you. And often that can be diluted. So I guess let's go back to storytelling, because it's an easy way to encompass all of it. Better storytelling to the correct people. I couldn't stress that enough. Yeah. I really couldn't.
And talking about storytelling, though, and crafting that narrative, what's a good way to draw that out? What questions should a founder be asking of themselves, of the brand, to be able to craft that narrative?
I have a good example, actually, because yesterday a good friend of mine has retrained as a yoga practitioner, or yogi, not sure how you call them, and she was asking my advice over coffee as to what to do with her website. And I don't know how many of you here or listening knows somebody who has retrained in yoga, or perhaps you attend yoga classes, or maybe you are a yogi yourself. But everybody does yoga, right? It's slightly yesterday, although it's not a yesterday thing. But it's not pioneering, unless you're going to do it on one finger. But it's not pioneering. And so we were talking about how she's going to stand out, and that's really hard. She does it in southwest London in Parsons Green. Guess what? There are a lot of other people who do that too. So in conversation, she started to reveal that she was interested in she said, I don't really know how to say it, but there are women, going through the menopause, their body changes, their strength changes, but they don't know what to do, they don't know where to start, the usual story. But I said, right, so there you go. I mean, usually when I have a one-to-one, the beginning intro, when I say, what's wrong? They say everything that they're not doing. They go, well, the thing is, I really want to X, Y, and Z, but it's just not happening. And I'm like, hang on, but why didn't you why isn't that making part of your communication? So with my friend, we talked about bringing that niche that she is considering forward among other niches that she's looking at. And she's not the first person to go into menopausal yoga. That's not what she calls it, and that's not a thing. But she is going to be able to access more people by using words which are sympathetic about the way a woman's body might change through milestones throughout her life. And that will appeal to people from 20 all the way up, which suddenly widens the audience. You've got to think about the conversations you can have within your business and niche. You have to include people. It's like when you hear another conversation somewhere near you happening. You will stay quiet if it's got nothing to do with you, but you will go, oh, sorry, I actually have to add that I've been to that restaurant and it's really rubbish, don't go there. Because you feel included in that conversation or feel like you can include yourself. A good way to get people to talk about what you do and what you're selling is to ask the question, obviously that you know the answer to, but ask the question that you know is in their head. So if you've created something which provides some sort of a solution, even if it's stationary all the way to yoga or more, you are getting into the head of that customer or potentially a customer. Ask the questions. Do you find that you're too, let's go back to yoga, do you find you're too nervous to start attending yoga again because everyone's going to be better than you? That's a really basic question. But immediately I'd be thinking, yes, oh my God, totally, that's me. And also I'm very concerned you're going to make me do a handstand. But if she removes handstands from that first communication, then I know I'll be in a safe place. So it's sort of getting into the head, asking questions. In fact, you can start all of your social media content, I say this to a lot of people, with a question, especially if you don't know what to say. Do you find that sort of thing?
And I suppose it's more, what I was thinking is, from a business founder point of view, for them to pull out the stories that they can talk about. What are the strands and the threads that they... I know this is in general, because everybody's business will be different, but what are the strands and the threads that they could pull out from a storytelling point of view?
I suppose it's what led you to start it in the first place. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, when you have any kind of business that you want to shout about or a service, it's sort of, I want you to tell me what you do, why you do it, and why you're brilliant at it. I don't want to hear that you're sort of on a journey. I want to hear that you're the best. I always, you're going to laugh, but given that it's so apt this month, I've got to say it. But I always say to people, be more Donald Trump. Because people like him, never going to come in and say, oh, I run a small business and, we're in our third year. Last year was quite tricky, but this time I really think 2025 is like, he would never say that. He'd say, I run the most enormous business and it's going to take over everything and I am excellent. And I'd say, what is the reason why you started it? Usually why you start something is always of relevance to someone, and maybe you're answering, there's a gap in the market. Perhaps it was something that you did as a child, or you were brought up in Hong Kong and you're bringing back something, which there's always a story, and that is how you start. Because if you pour savings, time, energy and whatever into something, make it worthwhile. Tell people why. I always say, don't be quietly brilliant. Essentially, that should be your motto, everyone.
And some people may have a bit of a spray and pray approach with PR. Pitching to 15 journalists, having XYZ on their list. How would you approach it with someone of where they should put their focus?
Well, depends what you do. If you're pitching to more than 4 people, you've gone wrong somewhere, because there aren't 4 people you could possibly be pitching to. I don't know what you do, but I think I'm right in saying that. I'm going to go out there and say it. The answer to that, Nicole, is really to be a research whore. You need to know where you want to end up. And you need to have almost one goal, maybe 2 max. You need to have a goal either as a journalist goal, so I want let's make up a name, Sally Smith, to feature me, because I really love her articles about founders. I want to be featured by her. So you knock on that door as loudly as you can, and I know that you'll hear tumbleweed. We all do in every walk of life. If we're pitching for a stand here perhaps or somewhere else, you get knockbacks, but rejection is certainly not the reason to stop doing anything. As we all know, we tell younger generations. You need to... Does that make sense? You cannot stop at rejection. And I would say with journalists, if you are very keen on one particular person, one particular column, go for it. There couldn't possibly be more than 2 or 3 that you could be aiming for, because suddenly what happens is people start copying their pitches into other emails and sending them out to the 3 or 4 people. And suddenly what happens, if you were to meet those 4 people, 5 people in real life, you'd have a different conversation with each one of them. So how could an email or indeed a pitch be exactly the same? It's not, you dilute the energy of what you're trying to say and the passion if you do that. We've all received round robins before, or something that feels like a round robin, and you know instinctively. So in terms of finding people, I would say the last time you saw a contemporary or a rival or someone similar receive a piece of or achieve a piece of press that really annoyed you, that you wanted or you want in the future, that is the sort of driver to getting it right, to knowing what kind of exposure you want, whether it's about you or the business as a founder or the product. Some people want to be completely discreet because they run, they've created an app which helps with healthcare. I mean, it's nothing to do with the person. Maybe they don't have a story in healthcare which has led them to this moment. They just had a really good idea in the shower. Therefore, they need to push what they're trying to do and what they're trying to change. I really wouldn't stalk, but I would certainly make it my life's work to work out what gets that particular journalist, columnist going, and try to appeal to what it is they clearly want to write about and cover.
And where's the best place to... Like you said, there's many journalists now, they're working freelance, so it's not like you can go Sally at hearst.co.uk and she'll get the email, or editorial desk, and that person will get that person that you want to approach will get the email. I know there's LinkedIn, there's Instagram, if they have public profiles. Is it okay to target them there, to approach them there? Yes, because they wouldn't be there if they weren't showing off what they do. So most journalists are not salaried anymore. They, as I said, job share, freelance. And if they're freelance, they're looking for work too. So they usually have a website of their own. Also, journalists, I'm generalizing enormously, they tend to have quite a big ego, and they need to, and they like to show off what they've done. So you'll find more often than not, well, I find anyway, people say, what is so-and-so's email? And I would necessarily know that particular person who they're trying to get, and I Google them, and there's a website. Yeah. Might not be a very accomplished website, but it has lots of their articles and certainly how to contact. And when you see that email address, you think, gosh, that person really wants me to get in touch with them. And I immediately think, this is a win. Yeah. When they're hard to find, they really don't want to hear from you. But even then, you can find them because it depends who you're trying to target. A Financial Times will always have the same sort of email address. A lot of magazines are, as you say, owned by Hearst or big companies, so that the end of the email address is the same. LinkedIn and Instagram, unless you're seeing photographs of their children on holiday, they are there because they often say, thank you for the commission, and this is an article I wrote last week about my house in Shropshire, someone else's house. So that means that they are approachable. Yeah. So, take a sort of a clever view on it, but generally, if they're exposing themselves, they probably want to be found. Yeah. And what are the biggest PR mistakes you see businesses making, and how can they be avoided?
Signing up to some kind of a PR agency where they are just being sent out to journalists, I use quote unquote, people who can't see me, and that's it. There's no, I don't know, it's a bit like getting into a Aston Martin with no petrol. Yeah. So you sit there knowing you've done the right thing because you've ticked the box of the car you've always wanted, but it doesn't drive.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's a very hard thing to measure return on investment PR point of view, unless there's something linking. If it's a product piece and it's linking directly to that, and you see the product pieces.
Yeah.
You know, you see the product sales.
Yeah. My advice with that sort of PR is, if somebody's going to do it for you, you have to have a very close relationship with them, because your passion will dip and peaks and troughs all the time. And if you were doing it, that would be reflected in how you spoke to people and how you know, a hit for you will be more exciting than a hit for the person who's being paid every month to do it. So when you get a hit, you want to do more, you know. They won't necessarily. They'll think, oh, we've done our hours. That, to me, in a really busy market, I've done my hours, I don't need to do any more, March is sorted because she's happy with that, is not good enough.
Yeah.
It's not good enough. And personally, I teach, other people teach a life skill, well, I think it's a life skill, how to pitch yourself, how to tell that story, and be confident to be socially brave with anyone and say, no, you need to have us, or this is why I created X, Y, and Z. No one's going to do that better than you. It's a bit like crossing the road with your own children. You sort of trust yourself more than anybody else. It's just instinctive, and that is, I would say, the same thing about selling the thing which you've put all your love and energy and tears into.
And obviously, there's a lot of talk about AI and using AI different parts of your business. Is there a way to use AI with PR? As a journalist, that's probably the wrong question to ask you. But.
I know, AI has put the entire industry out of business. No, it's a good question. I mean, AI just gets more intelligent day by day, so it's silly not to try and also learn a little bit more. How would I use it? I certainly wouldn't use it for writing.
Yeah.
I'd be very concerned about that. I do understand that it's very useful to give you that push. I suppose what I would say is this is where the sort of AI as it is extremely clever and works for many things, including in the medical field and so on. But in this particular field, I would say that I think the personal touch is still greater than AI's muscle here. So if you're, I don't really so much mind, why would I mind? But if you wrote a pitch via ChatGPT, go for it. That's up to you. That's absolutely fine, especially if English is not your first language, all of those things. But finding the person who that ChatGPT paragraph is going to is, for me, the more important thing. I've seen pitches written to me, written in, I don't know, not so much a bad English, but more like running off a district line to you with the phone upside down. But if I needed to hear that, well, that's exactly what can make the end of my article better, I will respond to it.
Yeah.
It is it is getting the right person, not so much
attention.
how it's written. Yeah. So that is, I think AI doesn't help with that. But I would say you, like with every industry, you have to keep up with a technology that is working very fast because you do not want to be left behind. And also, sorry, just say quickly, that AI might be useful in your own business and industry, and people who are buying from you or interested in having you come to a panel and talk, they want to hear how you are modernizing with it. So don't just ignore it because you think, oh my gosh, I'm far too old to even deal with that. Actually, it might make you more relevant if you've chosen to have that conversation like you've asked me today. So it's one to watch. It's definitely evolving.
And lastly, before we take some questions, what are the key elements that a PR strategy should include? Have
I not answered that already? Gosh, everyone's going to get bored of me. Personality.
Three of them. Give me three.
Individuality. Oh my gosh, that's even harder. Okay, how do you describe yourself in 3 words?
Well, no, yes.
No. Individuality. I don't care if you sell candles. You're always going to have a different reason or a story to tell. There's just always going to be, because it's your personality, it's the reason, it's the sense, it's the story, it's the location, it's the everything. So individuality, passion, and that I really believe comes from you, not from other people. What's the third? The third is communication. You have to tell people. If you're quietly sitting in a corner, someone might step on your foot and then you get talking. That's not good enough. I don't want you to be boastful, but you do need to become a little bit of an advocate for your own thing. You just have to. You've got to shout a bit louder. Stand on your stage. No one's going to see you if you squeak like a mouse, or hear you if you squeak like a mouse. And really, at the end of the day, if you want to be, if you don't want to be ignored anymore, you want those sales, you want your hard work to be acknowledged, you have to do something about it. Only you know that. Yeah. My fourth one is feel the pain in your tummy and do whatever it tells you to do.
Step out of your comfort zone. And are there any questions about PR in general, or anything that you've got? I'll pop down. I love doing this. I feel like Annika Rice when I do this.
Okay.
I was just going to ask, just in terms of your experience, and do you think it's worthwhile sending in product samples? So I had a scenario recently where I sent a request in for PR, but their response was, can you send in a few samples and in return we'll give you an ad space within the magazine? So yeah, just any tips on that.
What is the products?
So I sell silk hair wraps and pillowcases for children and teens.
On the whole, I wouldn't give anything away for free, because once you do that, you lose control of it. Not even that you don't get it back, but just what does it do for you? But specifically, I would say absolutely no way if they say, then we'll give you an ad space, because that means you then have to pay for it. And that is not press. That's not editorial. That's advertorial. It's basically advertising. So if you've done it, don't worry, but don't do it again. Good. And that's why, by the way, people have turned to influencers, and I don't just mean sort of makeup influencers, like all varieties, because they're trying to do something too. They're trying to be noticed as well. So if you send them something and they're legit, it's a better business relationship. That one that you just described is not a healthy one. It's certainly not press. So because when you sign up to an advertorial, you don't know where that advertorial is going to go, how big it is, and you've spent a lot of money, and they will always come up with an excuse. So.
And it's an advertorial rather than an
exactly.
editorial.
Don't pay. If you're not doing advertising, then don't do that. But in terms of products, everyone, I probably wouldn't unless you know them extremely well. Yeah. Or you could just meet them for a coffee and show them. Be physical like that, and then take it home.
Yeah, better then, isn't it? Good to get to see the report. Any questions on this side? We've got some questions over here.
Hi there. Thank you so much. Great content, by the way. In terms of the press PR deck, how important it is for it to be very aesthetic? Like, how should it look? So, like, as a small business, for instance, when you're sending something out, like, is your imagery has to be, like, on point? Or, like, how much time should you spend on a PR deck?
It depends what you do, because if it's meant to look beautiful, it has to look beautiful. What do you do? That's probably easy.
Oh, sorry. I have a home fragrance brand.
Okay. That's really hard, because you can't photograph fragrance. You can't capture a moment. So yes, that's really important. Therefore, you've got to set the scene. Either you take a picture of a bottle by a waterfall and say this has been inspired by this, or this time I travelled there, which is tricky, or you have it in a very whatever the fragrance is trying to evoke. So if it's serenity or chaos, it's very important to show that via a visual. Yes, but I think in your case, perhaps. Talking out of my hat, but you also need to describe why you've done this quite a bit, because there's a lot of home fragrance. I'm sure there's a reason. I'm sure there's a nice story. That needs to accompany the photograph. It's not enough, the photograph. But I would definitely, to anyone, I would say, always invest in good photography, because it will stand the test of time. Even if it gets old, it's always great. It's like having a really young photograph taken of you. You always like to use that over and over again. It's worthwhile having it, yes.
Just one last question. Your subject line, how important is that? Because I know as a journalist, you probably receive lots and lots of emails every day.
Subject line, less important. The first line of the email is more important. It needs to sound a little bit like if you were at, a sort of a dinner party and somebody says, what do you do? And you just say it, including I've had an appalling day. And then they turn around and they say they're actually someone quite influential in the publication world, journalism world. And you're thinking, oh my God, that's the kind of pitch that gets people responding. So instead of filling it with, I was just thinking that maybe whether I should, maybe, that's just You know, do you remember at school when they used to put a big red mark through all the paragraphs of your work that you thought were excellent? That probably needs to happen to your emails, because the first line is somewhere buried right down at the bottom, which is what you need to... And you've got to put yourself in their shoes. Like, if that was you, what would you want to see first? So don't worry about the subject line so much. It's the first sentence. You know, my name is, and I'm sending you this because. You know, just be really blunt. What would Donald Trump do? There we go. Oh, no.
So, yeah, I just wondered if you had any advice for startups.
Yeah.
So where a product is not at market yet, it's not tested, and trying to get that balance between the time, money, and effort that you will spend on PR when perhaps your short-term goals and your long-term goals are not quite... So you might have a very short-term goal, but scaling up to the long-term goal, and how you... I guess where to start, I suppose.
So, I mean, PR is so much more than just press coverage. PR is sort of sitting here and doing this talk. It's being here, having a stand here this week. It's a lot. It's how you sound, what you look like on your... Not you, but what you're trying to sell on your website, your tone, where you've turned up, what collaborations you might have done, the language you use, very importantly, which is all about communication. It's not about, you know, scoring runs with a journalist or a particular influencer. They may only be interested in you if you are an established brand. So that almost might be a waste of time. What I would say is PR is so much more. Even your website is a form of PR. You know, everything's PR. So I would focus on the things which are the easy wins. As we said, I don't know what you do, but good photography, good communication. If somebody had to say, if someone asked you, what do you do? And you find it tricky, even I do, but to answer in a very quick sentence, I would focus much more on that than almost anything else, because you're going to have to at some point pitch, even to a friend, like, what are you doing? Honestly, that's rubbish. But if you pitch it better, they might be more interested. I would say all the small steps before the big stuff. If it's a startup, quite literally, start up. Go up the ladder. You can't do everything all at once. Yeah. I certainly haven't.
And I would add to that as well, because if your product's not ready yet, it's about building your audience, and I'd be focusing on that, telling your story, why you started, getting the website ready. For your time and money focus would be that, rather than if you're pitching to a journalist, it's, well, where's the product? Or, you know, your time for that, and then no one can buy it because it's not ready yet, and you've spent all that time, you know, trying to reach out. Any final questions before we wrap up?
Hi, we're a high-end online retailer. And circling back to influencers, there are plenty of people offering software which breaks down the number of influencers and the specific subjects that they work on, and also the territories in which they operate. I'm just wondering, do you advocate the use of that software and those people? And do you use them?
Do I have any use of the software, did you say?
Yeah, and do you use those?
No.
How do you find influencers then?
Well, I mean, I don't find them for me, but I find them for other people. Well, if somebody wants me to help them with their business, then I take a real deep dive into them, their world, what they're trying to do, who they are trying to influence, whether they're trying to reinvent the wheel or light a candle, everything in between. This is what I mean about becoming a research whore. You need if there's a shortcut, it's probably too good to be true. I'm sure this is I've never heard of this. I'm clearly a dinosaur. But if I were to advise someone, I would want to be extremely sure that I had seen someone over and over again that really, or a business that really felt like it could work for them. That is how, I think maybe the two together. It's a bit like AI. Is it going to write the best copy? Probably not. But if you're really struggling, give it a go. I think if someone's really interested in helping you raise your profile, you need somebody who has really looked at it and ripped it apart and put it back together again and built a puzzle for you.
And sometimes you might be better off working with brand ambassadors rather than lots of different influencers. So it's maybe spending that time at the beginning to find out, you know, there might be someone really good that you have internally that is really on it with your customer and knows what's what for them to do a bit of research first, and then find out, or you're speaking to the company and you're asking for a trial run. You know, a lot of companies can promise the world and then not deliver the results. So, but if it's a trial and it's a low cost, it could be worth exploring. But then it's who's the real where's that real connection? And, you know, it has to be authentic to your brand as well, to make sure that it resonates with your right customer. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Like I said, you can scan the QR codes and you will get through to my Instagram, The Buying Retail Coach, and Priscilla's at Top Trick, and see how you can work with us, what we do, and all about us. But have a lovely rest of the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.